Hi everyone, I'm Dan Wells. I write horror, fantasy, and science fiction, and I talk about games on the internet. And today we get to talk about Fallout. I am an old school Fallout fan, by which I mean that I loved the old turn based isometric games, and I really did not get into any of the shooter games, which have been far more popular than the original ones. I don't think that they're bad, they just weren't for me. But the world itself and the game systems surrounding them, I really loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And so I have been super excited for this new RPG to come out. I actually joined the beta test a couple of years ago when they released that, and I've watched the game evolve over time. And what has impressed me the most about this Fallout RPG is how closely it hews to the mechanics of the computer game itself. The way that the perks work, the way that the special system works, the skills, and all the attributes and everything. They have done an incredibly faithful job of translating all of that to tabletop. And I think it shines through that the people who made this game are big, big fans of the computer game. Anyway, let's dig into it a little bit. So, this is from Modiphius, and it is part of the 2D20 system. And I rave about this system all the time. I think it's a really good one. I think they've done a very good adaptation here. It is, kind of the classic attribute plus skill, combine those and roll some dice and see how you do. If you're completely unfamiliar with 2D20, the idea is that you roll two 20-sided dice, and you try to get under a target number. And every die you roll that gets under the target number adds a success. You can add extra dice. You can crit to get extra successes. And then the difficulty number is how many successes you roll. So, if something is really easy, it might be 1 or even 0 successes. If something is really hard, it could be 3, 4, 5 successes. And so there's a really fun dice system that helps navigate all of this. And a couple of cool currency systems as well. So for example, if you only need 2 successes on a die roll, but you get 3, that extra one you can take it and you can bank it. And in Fallout, they call those action points. And you can use those action points in future rolls to give yourself extra dice, to modify the game in certain ways, to add extra things to a scene, to do all kinds of fun stuff. It's a great system, and I think that you will like it if you've never tried it before. Let's take a look actually at the character sheet, because I think that is the best way in most cases of getting to know a game. So zoom way down here to the final page on my PDF. Here we go. Okay, so that's the second page of the character sheet. Here's the first page of the character sheet. You can see that a lot of the special system is still here: strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck. And kind of the Pip-Boy facade is still here. That very perky, delightful the interface, the kind of 50s style. This is the character sheet for a robot, the little handy robot guys, which is one of the playable races, and we'll get to that in a second. This is the character sheet for a human, and there's the little Pip-Boy guy. So what you do is you will have a certain score in all of these attributes. And then you will have a score as well in every skill. And these are the same skills from the game. And so when you try to do something, you will combine. So let's say that you want to shoot big guns. And it says that big guns is typically an endurance skill. Though every skill does have, in that chapter of the book, it talks about different ways of combining the skills in the attributes. So maybe for the most part, big guns is an endurance thing because they're super heavy and you've got to hold on to them for a long time and so on and so on. But maybe there are cases where it might use something else. One of the ones that I particularly remembered that I thought was very clever is the Unarmed Skill. While it is typically strength, you combine the unarmed with strength. Sometimes you would want to combine it with agility, and sometimes maybe even you would just combine it with charisma. If you're trying to intimidate somebody by just like cracking your knuckles or whatever, you can use that unarmed skill as a way of demonstrating, I clearly know what I'm doing and I know how to handle myself, and then combine it with charisma as a way of avoiding a fight rather than participating in one. So you will take your skill number for strength, and you'll take your your attribute number for strength, your skill number for unarmed. You will combine them together, and you will roll dice, and you will try to get under there. Any die that gets under that total number counts as a success. Any one that rolls in exactly number 1 is a crit, and that will count as 2 successes. Unless it is a tag skill, and you will have a certain number of tag skills that make you a lot better at things. And your tag skill basically increases your crit range to the size of the skill itself. And so maybe a 1 through 5 would then be a crit and count as 2 successes. So your tag skills are really valuable. As you can see here, there's not a lot of information. It is a pretty simple system. It does have hit location, which isn't something that I typically love in role-playing games. It seems to slow things down, but I do like the way that it makes armor matter. Hit locations become really valuable because they allow you to do extra things like make called shots to unarmored locations. They make armor matter in meaningful ways because if you only have armor on like your head and chest, then you get hit in the arm and you'll take extra damage, and so you'll think, well, I need to get better armor for my arms and legs and things like that. So I like that. We'll look at the weapons later. And here's basically all the perks and the traits on the back. And there's a lot of perks. And you know what? The great thing about the perks, they're exactly what they are in the computer game. So let's show off some of this stuff in here. We're going to go to the table of contents as soon as this loads. So there's... Good job, all you people who did this. Here's the table of contents, and you can see that they've kept this peppy kind of 50s grocery store style throughout. Let's find... Where are the perks? Come on, perks! Okay, whatever. We're going to page 42. Start the character creation process. So here you can see they've got, all of the, they're keeping this wonderful Pip-Boy art throughout. One thing they do point out with luck is not associated with any skills, but it can come up a lot. There are a lot of opportunities, a lot of instances in the game where you will want to be rolling on your luck attribute rather than on one of your other attributes. If you're game master or if you as a player decide, what I'm doing is such a crazy Hail Mary that it really should be done with luck instead of with agility or perception or whatever it is, then you have luck. And I think that's a really neat way of incorporating it into the system. Here's all the skills, and as you can see here, like athletics, and it describes what it does, and then down here it says its default special attribute is strength, but it can also be used with agility or endurance when facing physical adversity. You might use athletics when trying to push, pull, lift objects, jump, climb, swim, run. So, very standard skill kind of stuff. And then they've got some derived statistics like initiative and defense and very standard things. Now let's talk about perks. And we'll get to the perks a little later. It says perks are 55 through 73, but as long as we're here, they've got a two different types of character advancement. There's experience points, and then there's just milestone progression, where the game master says, okay, good job, gain a level. And both systems work. This is maybe not the only 2D20 game that uses levels. I wasn't sure how well the levels were going to work, but they've actually done a really good job of giving the game a sense of level-like progress. They've kind of tied levels into how a lot of the monsters work, and they've also tied leveling into the gear system, which is beautiful, and I'm going to show that to you later. But, I mean, part of the key of mimicking the feel of the computer game is that as you progress, you want to be gaining new powers, and you want to be gaining new and better equipment, and the leveling system helps keep that on track. There are other, some of the other 2D20 games have very loose, kind of waffly leveling systems, like Star Trek's allows you to change your character without really making your character more powerful, except at an incredibly slow pace. And Fallout has a different feel than that. And I do think that they've incorporated leveling into their system in a really good way. And we'll get to that gear system later. So first thing you're going to do as you create a character is you choose your origin. And they've got, let's get into these here. Brotherhood of Steel. And describe what the Brotherhood of Steel is, and then you get a special trait if you are part of the Brotherhood. They've got a ghoul. If you've never played the Fallout RPG, I should have said this right up front. It is a post-apocalyptic wasteland that takes place somewhere in North America. Different games have taken place in different parts of the world. This one uses as its base setting the Commonwealth, which is kind of like Boston, in and around Boston in the Northeast. But there are people in the world who have been so wildly irradiated that they look like zombies. And they are called ghouls. They're not zombies. They're not inherently evil. They don't eat brains or anything. They've got some really interesting powers in that they're immune to radiation and some other things, while at the same time being, kind of gross, and people don't trust them, things like that. I think they're a really fascinating character, race, heritage thing that you can be. There's also super mutants. Super mutants are like 7 feet tall. They're the subjects of experimentation, whereas the ghouls are humans who were altered by Fallout, by radiation and the war and just the horrible wasteland. Super mutants are humans who were altered on purpose by scientists, and sometimes in pretty terrible ways. And so, if you want to be a super mutant, there you go. Mr. Handy, those are the robots that you saw at the back. They have their own little character sheet because their hit location tables are slightly different, and they've got their own special traits and their own things they can do. Survivor. This is kind of the basic character class or character background. And you can see that because instead of one trait to define everything the way the other backgrounds got, they've got 5 different ones. So depending on how you want to flavor your survivor, this is someone who lives in the wasteland and scavenges for supplies and does their best to stay alive. Last of all, of course, we have the Vault Dweller. The Fallout setting has a bunch of vaults. People who, went into these things to stay safe, like giant Fallout shelters, basically. And there were hundreds of them, and they're kind of scattered all around, and different ones had different themes. Sometimes they were ruled by despots. Sometimes they were ruled by mad scientists. Sometimes they went horribly wrong. And the way many of the video games begin is that you are a vault dweller who, the doors open up and you go out because you think that the radiation's all gone and it's safe to go outside, and you walk out the door and find this blasted wasteland in which nothing can live and everything is desperate and so on. And so if you want to be a vault dweller, you can be a vault dweller. There's even rules for ghoul vault dwellers because some of the vaults were not as shielded from radiation as people wanted them to be. There's a huge section in the back, by the way, about vaults themselves and exploring them, how to use them as dungeons, thing like that. They've done a good job. Then you get to mess with your attributes a little bit. You get to choose your skills and tag them. And then we get to the perks list. And so you can see these are, for the most part, the perks that I remember from the computer game. And there are, different ranks of them. So, for example, Adamantium Skeleton has 3 ranks. You can take this 3 times. There are prerequisites to it. And there's lots of different things that can happen. So each of these, I really love the way that these are handled. A lot of the other 2D20 games use skill trees, and they try to tie the talents directly to skills or things like that. I like this system better because it feels so much simpler and so much more modular. It's easy to scan through the list and say, oh, well, barbarian. This is going to help me increase my physical resistance and help keep me alive in the wilderness. Yay, I'm going to do that. And then you can kind of take that regardless of which skills you're good at. You just have a lot more control over things. Now, you'll notice here that there's a perk called Armorer. You can take up to 4 ranks of it. And again, when we get to that gear system later on, you're going to see that there's a lot of perks that are very specifically based around crafting. I'm not a huge fan of crafting in video games, but I do like it here. One thing that the 2D20 Conan game added in the Conan Exiles sourcebook was this very elaborate but very smooth, simple of system of crafting and of gearing up and of being able to build things and scavenge things and find things. They've taken that system, which was already one of the most compelling parts of Conan, and they have expanded it massively. They've flavored it perfectly for Fallout, and it's a huge part of the game now. And I love it, and we'll get to it. So let's take a look here. So, for example, better criticals. Because this is a game that doesn't really have critical damage the way a computer game has, their better criticals perk, first of all, you require a lot of luck. And then it says, when you inflict 1 or more points of damage to an enemy, you may spend 1 luck point to automatically inflict a critical hit, causing an injury. So instead of just damage, you cause an injury, which is awesome. So I like the perks system a lot. I like this art style. I always have. So hooray for that. And they've got Dogmeat. Dogmeat's a beloved character from the video games, and he's a perk now. And so if you want to have a pet, boom, you just pick this perk, and then you've got Dogmeat, or you can name your animal anything you want. It doesn't have to be Dogmeat himself if you want to have a different name for your dog. But it's awesome stuff. So let's skip through to the end of all these perks. Go away, perks. And then you've got some more derived statistics there at the end, and you're done. Your character is pretty much finished. All you have to do is add some equipment, which is mostly just package equipment based on your background. So if you're in the Brotherhood of Steel, then depending on if you're an initiate or a scribe, you get this equipment, and boom, you're ready to roll. So, hooray for that. I do think that's a lot of fun. And then they've got personal trinkets here at the end. Not every character has a trinket, but you can see, for example, here the trader does get 1 personal trinket. The wanderer gets a personal trinket. And these are something that you can use to kind of look at them and ponder them. And this is the scene in the post-apocalypse movie where the hero, who's been injured and who's had to go through horrible things, finally finds a moment of respite and pulls some old dog tags or a locket or a photo or whatever it is out of their pocket and remembers all the people that they've lost and, kind of thinks about the past, and it refreshes them a little bit. And I love that they've codified that moment. That's so, we've all seen that moment. Like, that was the finale climax moment of the movie 1917. Which is effectively a post-apocalypse movie. They've taken all that kind of stuff and just gamified it, codified it into the game as a mechanic. And I love that. I think it's awesome. Anyway, now let's take a look at the equipment system. Okay? And I'm not actually going to look at all of this stuff. Okay? We're going to mostly skip over Chapter 4, except to just show you, look, there's different ways to get equipment. There are ways to modify equipment, which we're going to skip ahead and show you all of that. Here's all the stats. Here's the rules about what works. And then eventually we're going to get to, a list of small guns. And here's what they do. It's a fairly crunchy system, as you can see. One of the things that I really like about it, honestly, is how many different types of guns there are, because that requires many different kinds of ammunition. And the reason that I like that, even though that is an extra complication on the game, the reason I like it is because it makes the scavenging system work so well. So that when you are out in the wilderness and you're trying to find something that you need, and you come across like some, 38 special bullets, but all your guns just take 45 rounds or 9mm rounds or something, and so then, there's that moment of hope followed by a moment of desperation, or maybe you just go back to your, Jeep that you managed to keep running, cobbled together with duct tape and wire, go through the trunk and find, oh, I do have one little gun that works with these kind of bullets. And so that's the gun you're going to start carrying around because those are the bullets you found. I like that kind of desperation and that kind of scarcity of resources. And so a bunch of different kinds of weapon and different kinds of ammunition can help create those moments where you find something that isn't quite right. If the game just had generic magazines, and you could use bullets from these magazines in any gun that you had, it would be simpler to play, but it would lose a lot of flavor, and it would lose so much of that fringes of civilization, the corpse of a civilization, trying to survive and make do with what you have. If everything was easy, you'd lose that feel, and so things become hard. Now, let me skip ahead really far, because now at last I'm actually going to show you the gearing system, but it's gonna take me a while. Okay, what's this? What are we looking at here? Oh, these are vault jumpsuits. Okay, so you can see here, as we've been going through this system, okay, as we've been going through this chapter, it's been showing not only important gear, but it's been showing you the mods for the gear, okay? And you can see that the perks here part of the chart shows what perk and what level of that perk you have to have in order to create this mod. And so if you come out of a vault and you've just got that little blue vault jumpsuit and you want to give it some extra armor, how do you do that? Well, there's different ways you can do this. If you want to give it special shielded lining that will protect you from energy damage and from radiation damage, it's going to cost you, but also you need to have Armorer 4 and Science 4, and so maybe you can't jump right to that. You just start with Armorer 2 and you're able to give it this little thing. Or maybe you don't have any of these perks at all, and so you just go for the insulated lining, just the bare minimum. And I love this because eventually this is the kind of thing that can help produce... Let me see if I can find the picture that I want to show you. These just over-the-top Man, my computer's just running really slow. So, over the top kind of, you know, in the Mad Max where the cars all just look a little crazy and the armor looks a little crazy, and it's because they've just cobbled things together from whatever they could find and make do with what they have. That's what I'm talking about. That's how it works. That's how this gear system works. So, for example, here, these are chems. If you want to make chemicals, whether those are chemical weapons or drugs or healing potions or any kinds of other things, here's what it is. Here's what it does, and then here's all the stuff. You know, all the little information you get about it. Okay, and then if we go a little further down, here's all, you know, further descriptions of what those things are, and there are tables also of oh yeah, they have a whole section of books. Did I skip over that? So one of the fun things about the game is that you can find these important books, and you can find books here in this system as well. And it's I love these, where they will give you different perks, they will give you different abilities because you have this issue of La Fantoma. Then you get this perk where you can, you know, when you sneak, if you succeed, you can spend an action point to create a distraction somewhere else, and it's because you've read this book and you know how to do it. And that's such a great thing to pull out of the game. I love that. So I'm not really finding the cool thing I wanted to show you, though. So let me keep looking. This is getting ridiculous. Here we go. Okay, so the survival section, chapter 5. There is... this is key to any good post-apocalypse game. For me, surviving, telling a story in a post-apocalyptic environment is all about the struggle to survive. Clearly, there are going to be other stories told, right? There are going to be bad guys that you need to defeat, monsters that you need to, you know, run away from, settlements that you need to befriend or help or something, but at the end of the day, what you're all doing is just trying to stay alive. You're trying to find enough food to eat. You're trying to find shelter. You're trying to find bullets for your gun, whatever it is, gas for your car. And so we start off by getting these rules for fatigue and hunger and thirst. And this isn't quite to the level of like a survival video game where it is constantly tracking you know, whether you're dying of thirst or not. But it is abstracted into a usable way so that when you need it, you're able to say, oh, you know what, you're right, we're completely out of food, we need to find some right now or we're going to start suffering penalties, which is something that a lot of games gloss over. There are rules for it in D&D, but they are mostly optional. And you could consider them optional here if you wanted. But if you really want to dig into that survival side of it, you can. What happens when you don't get enough sleep? What happens if you get exposed to elements or to disease or to radiation and all of these other things? And then last of all, we get to scavenging. This is where the game really starts to sing for me. Okay? So let's take a look at this. If you are going to scavenge, there are different rules, like the degree is important because you want to know if the place you're trying to scavenge has already been picked over by some other survivors or if you've managed to find some untouched thing. You also need to know how large it is because that can determine how many items you're able to find in it, right? And how much time it takes to search. And so then, you know, it talks a little bit about what are the kinds of obstacles that you're going to encounter. How do you balance those hazards, you know, maybe if you go into, let's say, an old parking garage, an underground parking garage, you can search that, and you're likely to find a lot of interesting things. But there might be people or creatures living down there. There might be, a source of radiation that is making it dangerous or hazardous to even be there. Maybe it's not radiation, but it's like toxic gas. So there's lots of problems that you could have. There's also, of course, just the sheer obstacle of maybe the gate is down and you can't get in. Or maybe all of the valuable stuff down in that parking garage is inside of cars and trucks and stuff, so you can't get it out unless you're able to get into the trunk or whatever it is. So, then we have loot tables, and loot is put into categories. Now, one thing that is lacking in this game, let's go back a couple of pages. When it's giving the example here, the sole survivor is searching a ruined home at the edge of Concord. It's an average location and partly searched, so it requires a difficulty 1 test. Average location. Partly searched means difficulty 1 test. Average location means 30 minutes. So, it's a difficulty 1 test and takes 30 minutes to search. Its item listing is as follows: 1 to 2 clothing, 2 to 4 food, 1 to 3 beverages, 2 to 6 junk, 0 to 1 weapon, ranged, 0 to 1 ammo, 0 to 1 chems. He passes the test, the search test that he needs 1 success for, scoring 3 successes, so he receives the minimum items from the house. 1 roll on clothing, 2 rolls on food, etc. Now, that's all beautiful. That's all wonderful. And it is going to be great to go through and, be able to tell, well, we did search this house. And so, yeah, we get a roll once on this ammo table and once on this clothing table and so on and so on. What the game does not include, and this is not a significant knock against it, but definitely an annoyance, is that nowhere in the book, not here in the scavenging section, not later in the locations section, or the world building, or any of the descriptions of actual locations, nowhere does it include those little lists that say this type of place has these types of things in these quantities. Everything that we just saw in this example, this whole bit, it's item listing. There are no locations with item listings anywhere in the book that I can find. And that is super obnoxious. And you can create those yourselves, certainly. You can use the rules that are given here to come up with your own listings for that. But why should you have to when they could have put them in? There's a massive section later on, dozens and dozens of pages, where it talks all about the Commonwealth. What is Boston like? What buildings are there? And it gets down to specific buildings, and it doesn't give this item listing table for any of them, which is very frustrating. So you're going to have to do that work yourself, or wait for maybe more supplements are going to come out. There's not even a generic listing anywhere, which I thought maybe there would be, where it says, oh, you've found an average suburban house. This is what its item table is. You found a shipping warehouse out in the boondocks. This is what its item table is. Here's the item table for a restaurant. Here's the item table for an office building. None of that exists, and you have to build it all yourself, which is still better than nothing. It is still a very good looting and scavenging system, and I like it a lot. And I do like this modularity where you are able to say, for example, sure, yeah, you found some clothing, and then you can just roll on these tables and say, oh, well, yeah, you found a harness. Okay? Like a climbing harness. What are you going to do with it? And so they're very useful loot tables. I just wish that the location tables existed. And so you've got all of this stuff, all of these cool loot tables, and then what you're able to do with all of this stuff that you find. They even get into weird oddities and valuables and junk, and then you can craft with it. So assuming you have a good workbench and that you've got the perks that you need, you can repair broken items, or you can make cool new stuff. So let's say that you came out of a vault and you've just got that vault jumpsuit, but you want better armor than that. So you can make yourself your own ballistic weave stuff, and this complexity is the difficulty number you have to roll. And then here's the perks you need, here's the skill you need for it, and go. And this is my favorite part of this game. The really great scavenging system and those wonderful loot tables, and then the ability to take all of that stuff and build new things out of it. Any kind of armor that you would want. Any of those chems that we saw. You want to make them? Let's say you want to make, rad away right here to protect yourself from radiation. Well, you're going to need 2 rare materials, and it's abstracted some of these just into, you found 2 rare materials, good job. 3 glowing fungus, 1 common materials, 1 purified water. You make a science roll, you get at least 4 successes, and you have made Radaway to protect yourself or someone else from radiation. And so what this does is it creates a system where you're going to go out, and while you're trying to solve whatever other problem you're trying to solve, you are also simply exploring the environment, rolling on these loot tables, gathering junk and garbage, and then turning it into things. And that can be cool chemicals, that can be armor, that can be weapons. Let's try to find some of the weapons to show you. They've got this whole cooking thing. So you've found some stuff, you can create this, you can turn it into food, which is so great. Like Rad Stag is like this 2-headed elk kind of thing that's irradiated. You can make Rad Stag stew by combining all these other things together, if you want, to use the survival skill and do it. Okay, you can make your own power armor, you can make robots, you can make your own weapons, and maybe that's just little mods, like you have found a pistol and you want to make it into an automatic pistol, well, you can. Or you want to make it a little more powerful, or you want to modify the kind of bullets that it will fire. They have so many options to upgrade and modify your gear. And I love it. It's a really cool system. I really liked the way that they handled this in the Conan Exiles book, and it's even better than that here. What they don't really dip into here, I mean, they even have things like, you can see mods for baseball bats. You want to stick a bunch of spikes into a baseball bat? Well, boom, you can. Good job. And then you end up, this is the picture that I was looking for earlier. These are survivors out in the wilderness, in the wasteland, who are wearing just what they have, the armor and the weapons that they have managed to build out of garbage so that they can stay alive in this wasteland. And it has such a wonderful feel of, the post-apocalyptic things that we love. This looks like Mad Max. This looks like Fallout. This looks like The Walking Dead. That desperation of, surviving on junk. I just love it. I think it's such a cool thing. Anyway, they have a huge section here about corporations, and, well, let me show you a little bit about what those are like. So Red Rocket was like a gas station sort of thing, but with fusion cells, and you can see that here's an old Red Rocket station. The art is unilaterally great. And then how can you use this in your game? And sometimes the how can you use this in your game are little adventure hooks or just ideas. You've encountered this. Now what this doesn't include, again, there's nowhere that says, oh, you found an old Red Rocket station? Well, here's the item location table for it. That would be super handy, and it is not in here, and it continues to bug me. But there's a lot of stuff in here, and it talks about the different kinds of things that you can find and what it is like, and it always gives seeds for adventure. Okay? Now let's skip ahead to the vault section. Huge section that talks all about vaults and what you're going to find in here, what the different vaults were like, how they are different, specific stats on some of the vaults and what's it like. Like if you want to be from Vault 75, how do you incorporate that into your game? How's that going to change your character's background, and so on. And the same thing for lots of other different kinds of vaults. So hooray! Then we've got the Commonwealth, and this is the biggest of the setting-based sections. The Commonwealth is the areas kind of in and around Boston, like I said. And it gets into pretty good detail about the different areas, and then down into the specific, down to here's a farm, here's a drive-in, here's a diner. And it gives so much information that you can incorporate into your game. Whether you just need to describe a setting because you need them to find something. Where are they going to find it? Well, let's have them find it in Drumlin Diner. Or if you want to get more specific than that and just really good setting information. You know how to use setting information. I don't need to tell you. So that's what this game is like. Okay? It is a really good implementation of the 2d20 system. I love, as I said, the way that it mimics the computer game so closely. The way the skills work, the way the tag skills work, the way that the perks work. Everything feels like the video game in a very good way, while also being a very fluid tabletop system. You don't feel like you are jumping through hoops in order to emulate a different kind of game. It feels like it's source material while also feeling like itself. And that is all too rare in the world of adaptations. I love the equipment system, and I love the scavenging system, and I really love that crafting system. Like I said, I'm not in general a fan of crafting in video games because too often it can turn into a giant grind of just trying to find dumb little things. And in a game like this, it doesn't have to be like that. In fact, it shouldn't. You can use that scavenging system to let the characters explore. And if there's something they really need to build, they don't need to go out and just, kill rats for 3 hours hoping that one of them will drop the thing that they want. The game master has the freedom to let the player decisions and the player goals guide the kinds of places that they go and the kinds of loot that they find. And you can turn the dials as much as you need to let them feel accomplished and to let them feel like they are doing what they need to do while also giving them that sense of desperation. And the system is designed to create that feel of living in the ruins, and it's designed to give you the freedom of modifying that in either direction as necessary. So anyway, I love Fallout. You love Fallout. Everyone loves Fallout. It's a hugely popular game. And now I think that this RPG is poised to be huge. Definitely check it out. Try it out. As post-apocalypse games go, this is probably the very best one that I've seen because of the way that it takes all those different systems, builds on a really brilliant original property, and does new and exciting things with it. It's really kind of the best of all worlds. So, thank you so much for watching. I hope you get a chance to try this game, and I hope that you like it as much as I have enjoyed it for these past couple of years being involved with the beta. So, my name, as mentioned, is Dan Wells. Please take a chance to check out some of my books. If you like post-apocalypse stuff, I've got a New York Times best-selling trilogy about post-apocalypse science fiction called Partials. It's about, believe it or not, a plague that has destroyed the world, and the survivors are trying to rebuild civilization and trying to figure out some secrets and solve some problems. First book is called Partials. You should definitely go get it. I've got a lot of other books. You can check them all out. I also am a professional game master. I can run a campaign or a one-shot for you and your friends, possibly even Fallout, if that is what floats your boat. So look into that as well. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. My name is Dan Wells, and you are awesome.